The ground trembled beneath Ken Janeway's feet as he gripped his daughter's hand, urging her forward. The sky above Cape Canaveral was a chaotic tapestry of ash and fire, the sun obscured by the fury of erupting volcanoes. Each violent quake sent shockwaves through the earth, toppling structures and tearing fissures in the once familiar landscape. "Ayla, keep close!" Ken shouted over the cacophony. The 5-year-old clung to his arm, her small frame jolted by the uneven ground. Beside them, Katherine Janeway cast a fearful glance toward the horizon, where a colossal tidal wave loomed, its crest towering ominously as it surged inland, consuming everything in its path.
"The wave is gaining on us," she cried, panic edging her voice.
Ken tightened his grip on Ayla, determination fueling his steps. Their destination, the Kennedy Spaceport, formerly the Kennedy Space Center, was their only hope of escape. Awaiting them was the USS Donald J. Trump, the pinnacle of America's Space Force fleet, promising refuge from the planet's demise. His earpiece crackled to life amidst the chaos.
"Janeway, this is Shuttlecraft Bravo 7. We are departing in 8 minutes, with or without you."
"We're almost there," Ken responded, though the path ahead was fraught with obstacles. They navigated through a maze of abandoned vehicles and debris-strewn streets, the remnants of a society in collapse. The distant roar of collapsing buildings and the anguished cries of those left behind formed a haunting symphony of despair. As they neared the spaceport, its massive blast doors began to close, signaling the final countdown to launch. The USS Donald J. Trump dominated the landscape, its immense structure dwarfing everything around it. Even from a distance, the starship's sheer size was staggering, a testament to human ingenuity amidst impending extinction. Ken hoisted Ayla into his arms, her weight barely registering against his adrenaline-fueled strength. Katherine matched his pace, her breath ragged but unwavering. At the security checkpoint, armed Space Force Marines scrutinized evacuees, their expressions a mix of urgency and exhaustion. Ken flashed their presidential clearance badges, a lifeline granted amidst the chaos. "Janeway family, priority boarding," he shouted. A Marine nodded briskly.
"Proceed immediately."
The blast doors were nearly shut, a narrow gap remaining as they sprinted toward the shuttle. The ground beneath them shuddered violently, the tidal wave's proximity sending tremors through the facility. The shuttlecraft, though sizable, seemed minuscule as it prepared to dock with the USS Donald J. Trump. The starship's enormity was awe-inspiring, a floating city poised to escape a dying world.
30 seconds. The pilot's voice blared through Ken's earpiece.
Summoning every ounce of strength, Ken propelled himself and Ayla up the ramp, Katherine mere steps behind. As the shuttle's hatch began to close, they tumbled inside, collapsing onto the cold metal floor, just as the seal engaged with the resounding thud. Breathless, they lay in a tangled heap, the reality of their escape sinking in. Outside, the world they had known was consumed by nature's wrath. Through the viewport, the USS Donald J. Trump loomed closer, its vast hull stretching beyond the frame. The shuttlecraft, once a symbol of salvation, now felt like a mere lifeboat beside the Leviathan that would carry them to safety.
Ayla's small voice broke the silence. "Daddy, where are we going?"
Ken gazed at the approaching starship, its colossal form a beacon amidst the void. His voice trembled with a mixture of relief and uncertainty. "Somewhere safe, sweetheart. Somewhere safe." The shuttlecraft trembled slightly as it neared its final approach to the USS Donald J. Trump. Outside the viewport, the massive starship dominated their view, its sleek metallic hull gleaming against the backdrop of Earth's destruction. The scale of it was overwhelming, a fortress in the void, humanity's last hope. Ayla pressed her tiny hands against the glass, her wide eyes reflecting the massive docking bay opening before them. The landing sequence was precise, methodical. The docking clamps engaged with a smooth, controlled hiss, followed by the quiet hum of pressurization equalizing.
"Shuttle Bravo 7, secure and locked. Welcome aboard the USS Donald J. Trump," came a crisp voice over the intercom.
Ken let out a slow breath. They had made it. The shuttle's hatch slid open with a soft hiss, and immediately, the contrast from the chaos on Earth struck them. The air smelled clean, sterile yet fresh. A receiving team in neatly pressed blue uniforms stood in a precise formation, waiting to greet them. As Ken, Katherine and Ayla stepped onto the polished deck, crew members efficiently took their bags, offering respectful nods as they did. A tall man with a commanding presence stepped forward. His uniform bore a gold insignia, marking him as a senior officer.
Welcome aboard, Janeway family. I'm John Picard, operations team leader, he said smoothly.
His voice carried a refined authority, but there was warmth beneath it. I'll be escorting you through your initial processing and accommodations. I know it's overwhelming, but there's no need to take it all in at once. Ken and Katherine exchanged a glance, silently acknowledging the surreal nature of their situation. As they moved through the pristine corridors, the sheer advancement of technology aboard the USS Donald J. Trump became clear. Holographic displays flickered with real-time data, automated drones glided through passageways handling maintenance, and personnel worked seamlessly with AI-enhanced interfaces. This is the primary operations deck, Picard explained, as they passed a massive transparent panel showcasing the ship's astrometric scanning array, a breathtakingly detailed holographic map of the stars. This technology allows us to scan planetary systems light years ahead of our position. It's why you'll both be essential to the science team. No pressure.
Katherine let out a quiet whistle. This is unbelievable.
Ayla, completely enraptured, reached out to touch the glowing interface of a passing control panel. The display rippled in response, and an AI voice softly corrected. User unauthorized, please log in to continue.
Picard chuckled. Don't worry, Ayla. You'll get to play with the fun stuff later. She pouted but nodded. They arrived at a processing stateroom where medical and hygiene protocols were conducted for all new arrivals. A sonic shower station lined the walls, a far cry from the water-based bathing they were accustomed to. Ayla, however, took one look at the glowing shower pods and dug in her heels.
I don't want a shower, she protested, her lower lip trembling.
Picard crouched to her level, a friendly smile on his face. It doesn't use water, little one. It's just a warm tickle, and it makes you all clean, I promise.
Ayla crossed her arms, unconvinced. Katherine sighed and knelt beside her. Sweetheart, we've been through a lot today. Just this once, okay?
Ayla huffed dramatically but eventually relented, stepping into the pod. Within 10 seconds, the non-invasive sonic waves had removed every trace of dirt and bacteria from her skin and hair. She stepped out, sniffing herself cautiously before giving a small nod of approval. Ken smirked. We're in the future now, huh? Once they were all processed, they were issued their standard blue uniforms, the attire of the science division. The fabric was comfortable, flexible, and embedded with a subtle glow at the seams, indicating rank and department.
Congratulations, Picard said with a grin. You're both now officially lieutenant commanders in the USS Donald J. Trump's astrometrics team. Welcome to the Leadership Corps.
Ken adjusted his uniform, still processing the weight of responsibility settling on his shoulders. Lieutenant Commander? Not bad. Katherine smiled, already feeling at home in the structured environment. With their processing complete, Picard led them toward their staterooms. The walk through the corridors was another journey through the future. Ayla, endlessly curious, tried to touch everything, her small hands darting toward holographic displays, drone interfaces, and AI terminals. Ayla, Ken warned as she reached for a gravity field calibration panel. We don't want to mess with the ship's gravity settings, do we? She giggled but withdrew her hand. Midway to their quarters, a tense moment unfolded. A minor scuffle broke out between two crew members in a side corridor. Low voices turned into sharp words, and then a sudden shove. Security officers swiftly intervened, separating the pair before it escalated further. Ken and Katherine exchanged a glance. It was brief, but it didn't feel like nothing.
Picard waved it off with a reassuring smile. Nothing to worry about, just a little stress from the transition. We're still getting everyone settled.
Ken nodded, but Katherine wasn't convinced.
This will be your home, he announced. The space was far more luxurious than expected, a spacious living area, a large observation window showcasing the stars, and a fully interactive console system for personal and work-related tasks. Picard guided them to the food generation machine. Standard issue nutritional synthesis unit, he explained, pressing a button. A perfectly prepared plate of food materialized, programmed with thousands of recipes, including Earth's finest cuisine. Before Ken or Katherine could react, Ayla's eyes lit up.
Pancakes, she declared, pressing random buttons on the console.
The machine whirred, preparing her request.
Ayla,
no. Ken and Katherine said in unison. Picard laughed. Ayla smirked victoriously as she retrieved her pancakes. As Picard made his way to the door, he gave them a final nod.
Get settled in. Captain Mike Hurlburt expects you at dinner, 17 hours sharp. Don't be late.
The door hissed shut, leaving the Janeway family to take in their new reality. For the first time since the Earth began to collapse, they were safe. For now. The dining hall of the USS Donald J. Trump was a marvel of modern engineering. The walls were lined with interactive panels displaying real-time ship diagnostics, celestial maps, and live feed status updates. The lighting was soft but bright enough to highlight the polished metal furnishings and sleek design of the ship's most exclusive dining area. Ken, Katherine, and Ayla were seated at the long black glass table alongside several senior officers, including Captain Mike Hurlburt, a broad-shouldered man in his late 50s with an aura of absolute authority. His silver hair was cropped short, his sharp blue eyes constantly scanning, evaluating. Dinner was served. Perfectly synthesized steak, roasted vegetables, and fresh fruit, all produced by the ship's advanced food generation systems. The meal was flawless, though Ken couldn't shake the hollow feeling in his chest as he thought of those left behind on Earth. Captain Hurlburt leaned forward, a casual but calculated air about him. So, what do you think of the ship so far?
Katherine nodded, still absorbing everything. It's incredible. The level of technology here is beyond anything we ever trained with.
That's by design, Hurlburt said, cutting into his steak. The USS Donald J. Trump was built for long-term sustainability. We planned for every contingency, including the possibility of it becoming a generational ship should our destination be inhospitable.
Ken's fork hovered over his plate. A generational ship, you mean? A permanent voyage?
Hurlburt nodded. If necessary, yes. Which is why we have protocols in place for population growth. Every senior officer is expected to have 4 children. He glanced at Ayla, who was happily munching on a synthesized roll. You're a bit behind. Ken and Katherine exchanged a look, neither sure how to respond. Ayla, however, was quick to react.
Why 4 kids?
She asked, tilting her head. Hurlburt smirked. To maintain a stable population, we only took 1/3 of the ship's capacity during launch, leaving space for growth. Overcrowding would have strained our resources if Proxima Centauri B turned out to be uninhabitable. The executive officer, Commander Smith, cleared his throat. That brings me to an issue, Captain. We've had some disruptions. The scuffle in the corridor today? It's not an isolated incident. Some of the passengers aren't happy about how many people we left behind. Ken's stomach tightened. We did what we had to do, Hurlburt said firmly. A ship this size could only sustain so many people without risking resource depletion. We planned ahead, made the tough calls, and now we have to make sure this mission succeeds. Katherine's grip on her fork tightened. She wanted to argue, but what good would it do? Ayla, oblivious to the tension, piped up again.
What's Proxima Centauri be like? Can I have my own house there?
The table chuckled, breaking the unease. Hurlburt leaned back. Well, Ayla, that's what we're going to find out. It's an Earth-like planet, but we don't know if it's truly habitable. That's why we're making this trip. 9 months, maximum speed. The conversation continued, but Ken and Katherine had lost their appetite. The weight of everything was suffocating.
Back in their stateroom, Ken and Katherine sat, tension hanging in the air. We left billions of people behind, Katherine whispered.
Ken exhaled. And there's so much empty space on this ship. Before he could say more, Ayla climbed onto the bed between them.
Why do we have to have 4 kids?
Ken sighed. Not now, sweetheart.
But why?
Ayla. Katherine groaned. Bedtime. Ayla crossed her arms, pouting, but eventually wandered off to her small sleeping area. Ken reached for Katherine. You heard what he said. We're behind. She smirked. Well, we better catch up, then. Their kisses deepened, hands exploring, their bodies colliding in urgency. The stress, the fear, the sheer gravity of their situation, it all fueled their hunger for each other. Their movements were desperate, needy, driven by instinct. Clothing disappeared, hands grasped and held, gasps filled the quiet chamber. In this moment, they weren't astronomers, or officers, or survivors. They were just 2 people, trying to hold onto each other in the face of an uncertain future. And in the dark, beneath the sterile glow of the ship's automated systems, they tried to create life amidst the death they had left behind.
At 0700 hours sharp, Ken, Katherine and Ayla made their way to Hangar Bay 4, where emergency shuttlecraft training was set to begin. The massive hangar stretched out before them, filled with rows of sleek, white shuttlecrafts, their surfaces gleaming under the bright overhead lights. The USS Donald J. Trump was designed with redundancy in mind, each shuttle equipped with autonomous flight systems, manual override capabilities, and full survival modules in case of an emergency. Ayla bounced excitedly, her small boots clicking against the pristine metallic floor.
Do we get to fly one today?
Ken chuckled. Let's make sure we can land one first. At the front of the room, Lieutenant Davis, a veteran pilot with salt and pepper hair and a no-nonsense demeanor, clapped his hands together. All right, listen up. Welcome to Emergency Shuttlecraft Operations Training. If something goes wrong on this ship, and let's be honest, space is unpredictable, you may have to pilot a shuttle without AI assistance. We're going to go over flight controls, docking procedures, emergency landings, and atmospheric re-entry. Ayla raised her hand before he could continue. Davis sighed but smirked. Yes, Ayla?
Can I fly one now?
A few of the trainees chuckled, but Davis shook his head. Not today, kiddo, but by the time we're done here, you'll know how one works better than half the junior pilots.
I already do.
Ken and Katherine exchanged a glance. Given her encyclopedic knowledge of space, they wouldn't be surprised. Davis led them over to a training simulator, a replica of the shuttle's cockpit. The panoramic display flickered to life, showing a simulated view of space. The seats were designed for 2 pilots, but Ayla insisted on climbing onto her mother's lap, eager to see every control. All right, Davis continued. The shuttlecraft's AI system will handle 90% of all standard operations, but in the event of an emergency, power loss, AI corruption, combat damage, you need to take control manually. Let's start with the basic controls. The holographic control panel lit up, showing the thrust, stabilizers, navigation, and landing gear functions. Ken placed his hands on the controls first, following Davis's instructions. Engaging primary thrusters. He gently nudged the throttle, and the simulated shuttle drifted forward with a soft hum. Good. Davis nodded. Now try a stabilization check. Ken adjusted the attitude thrusters, making minor corrections to keep the ship steady. The display indicated a perfect balance. Nice work, Davis said, then turned to Katherine. Your turn. Katherine slid into the co-pilot's seat, glancing at the HUD display. All right, engaging lateral thrusters. She tapped a few controls, and the shuttle rotated slightly, shifting its axis without overcorrecting. Very smooth, Davis praised. Now let's go over emergency procedures. If you're piloting manually and you lose engine power, your best friend is going to be momentum and trajectory calculations. Ayla, care to explain why? Ayla clapped her hands.
Because space doesn't have friction, so if you push forward, you keep going forward forever unless something stops you.
Davis blinked. Well, that's exactly right. Katherine smirked.
She's 5.
Davis laughed, rubbing his temple. I can see that. He continued, guiding them through docking procedures, emergency evasive maneuvers, and atmospheric re-entry calculations. Now, Davis said, tapping a few controls. We're simulating an emergency scenario. You've lost your primary thrusters and you're drifting. What's your move? Ken scanned the HUD display, thinking fast. We can use the reaction control system thrusters to redirect trajectory. Then, if the auxiliary power is still active, we can restart the main engines manually. Davis nodded. Exactly. But what if the auxiliary power fails? Katherine answered next.
Then we use our momentum and gravity assists. We align with a stable trajectory and let physics do the work. Ayla bounced on her mother's lap.
Or, if there's a planet nearby, we can use an aerobraking maneuver to slow down without engines.
Davis shook his head with a grin. You're gonna replace me, kid. For the next few hours, they practiced emergency takeoffs, manual landings, and even MMID flight course corrections. Ayla was rattling off planetary orbits and gravitational slingshot calculations as if it were bedtime trivia. All right, Davis finally said, stretching his arms. That was the best first day session I've seen in a long time. Ken, Katherine, you're both ahead of schedule. Ayla, you're a walking encyclopedia. Ayla beamed. Ken chuckled as he ruffled her hair. She does that.
1,300 hours, astrometrics. By the time Ken, Katherine, and Ayla reached astrometrics, they had shaken off the morning's intensity, but only slightly. The lab was one of the most technologically advanced areas on the USS Donald J. Trump, spanning 2 levels with holographic displays of star systems, gravity simulation models, and quantum telemetry panels. Their team of 10 subordinates was already assembled, waiting eagerly as Ken and Katherine entered. A young officer, Ensign Trask, stepped forward. Sir, ma'am, we're eager to start. We've been looking over the systems, but we're still trying to grasp everything. Katherine glanced around the room. Most of the personnel were fresh recruits, barely in their 20s. She could already tell that their grasp of deep space physics was academic at best, not the field experience she had hoped for. Ken took a deep breath. All right, let's start simple. Who can tell me the primary function of astrometrics on a deep space mission? A nervous silence. Then a woman near the back raised her hand. Star mapping, sir? That's part of it, Ken nodded. But our real job is predicting the future. Confused looks. Katherine stepped in.
Everything about interstellar travel comes down to navigation and resource planning. We have to map gravitational fields, identify potential threats, and pinpoint viable worlds before we even arrive. She activated the holographic star chart, the image expanding into a massive 3-dimensional projection of the Proxima Centauri system. One of the ensigns muttered, "Whoa." Ayla, arms crossed, observed the room before speaking confidently.
They don't know about orbital decay, do they?
Ken chuckled. I don't think so, sweetheart. Ayla, oblivious to her age, marched up to the hologram and tapped on Mars, bringing up its current orbital path in Earth's solar system.
See? Planets don't just sit still, she explained. Over millions of years, their orbits shift. That's why some exoplanets that look habitable now might not be later. And that's why our job isn't just to look at where planets are. We have to figure out where they'll be. A stunned silence. Katherine smirked, shaking her head. She's not wrong.
Ken leaned in. All right, new plan. Ayla, you're teaching today. A few of the scientists chuckled, but they listened. For the next few hours, Ken and Katherine went over systems training, while Ayla, much to everyone's amusement, rattled off planetary data with astonishing accuracy. By the end of the session, Ensign Trask sighed, rubbing his forehead. Well, this is embarrassing. A 5-year-old knows more than us. Katherine patted his shoulder.
Don't worry, Trask. We are all learning.
Later that night, the end of everything begins. Ken was already awake when the first explosion rocked the ship. At first, he thought it was a malfunction, maybe a power surge in the reactors or a failed calibration in the ship's gravity systems. But the next explosion, deeper and far more violent, shook their stateroom with such force that objects were knocked from the walls. The emergency klaxon horns screamed to life. Katherine shot up beside him, barely awake, heart pounding.
Ken, what was that?
Ayla let out a frightened whimper, clinging to the blankets in her small sleeping alcove. Ken was already moving. He grabbed his uniform jacket, pulling it on as the ship's AI announced over the comms.
Attention all personnel. Multiple hull breaches detected. Fire suppression teams report to affected sectors immediately.
He turned to Katherine, his mind already calculating the situation. I'm going to the bridge.
Katherine reached for him. Be careful.
Ken hesitated for only a moment before rushing out the door. The corridors were chaos. Emergency lights pulsed red, illuminating the rapidly deploying security teams and fire droids skittering along the walls to contain the damage. Ken ran, dodging crew members who were shouting into their wrist communicators, trying to coordinate containment efforts. Another explosion rocked the lower decks, sending a shudder through the bulkheads. By the time Ken burst onto the bridge, Captain Hurlburt was already standing at the center of the chaos, his hands gripping the command console. His face was grim, tight-lipped, his usual commanding presence tinged with frustration. Commander Smith was at his side, his expression one of pure panic. Ken strode toward them. Captain, what the hell is happening? Hurlburt's eyes flickered to him, then back to the cascading readouts on the command console.
Extremists, he said. His voice was hard as steel. Some thought we had no right to leave Earth.
Ken's blood ran cold. You're saying there were infiltrators?
Smith turned toward Ken, his face pale. They set explosives in key structural areas. We're losing critical systems. The droids are working on the fires, but there aren't enough of them.
Ken's eyes moved across the display screens, his mind racing. Damage reports were coming in faster than they could be processed. Fires in the engineering decks, decompression in multiple storage bays, a near-critical reactor instability warning flashing in deep red. And then, over the ship-wide comms, a voice began to pray. A soft rhythmic chant, dozens of voices murmuring in unison. We were never meant to leave. This is not our destiny. We returned to the dust from which we came. It sent a chill down Ken's spine.
Smith turned to Hurlburt, his panic now barely contained. Sir, the droids can't hold the fires. We don't have enough crew to fight them manually.
Another explosion. This one directly beneath them. The floor lurched, and then, the hull ripped apart. For a fraction of a second, Ken was weightless. He saw the sheer horror in Hurlburt's eyes, saw Smith's mouth open in a scream that never came, saw the stars spinning wildly as the force of decompression tore them from the bridge. And then, darkness. Ken Janeway was gone.
Back in their stateroom, Katherine hadn't moved since Ken left. Her hands were clenched into fists, her body wired with tension. She had been listening to the comms chatter, trying to piece together the chaos. But when she heard the explosion on the bridge, her heart stopped. Ken? She whispered. No answer. Ayla, still tucked into her alcove, was now sobbing softly, her small fingers clutching the fabric of her blanket. Katherine swallowed the lump in her throat. There was no time to grieve. No time to let fear take hold. They had to go. She grabbed Ayla, scooping her up into her arms. Hold on to me. We are getting to a shuttle. The hallway outside was filled with smoke and flashing emergency lights. The walls were scorched from fire, the air thick with the acrid scent of burning metal. Katherine ran. Every few steps, the ship lurched beneath her, the floor groaning as explosions tore apart the structural integrity. Ayla was crying into her shoulder, but Katherine didn't stop. Couldn't stop. They rounded a corridor, the entrance to Hangar Bay 2 just ahead. And then, a final explosion detonated behind them. Katherine felt her body lifted off the ground, thrown forward by the sheer force of the blast. Everything went black. Katherine's eyes fluttered open. Pain. She could feel it. Her leg was trapped, pinned beneath a massive chunk of bulkhead debris. Sparks rained from exposed wiring above her, and the sound of fire roaring filled the air. Ayla was crying beside her, curled up in a ball, shaking. Katherine gritted her teeth, forcing herself to focus. She reached for Ayla, pulling her close. Sweetheart, listen to me.
Ayla sniffled, tears streaking her dirt-covered face. Mommy.
Katherine swallowed down the pain, ignoring the burning in her leg. You have to run. Go to the shuttle. Enter the coordinates for Proxima Centauri b, just like we practiced.
Ayla shook her head violently, clutching onto Katherine's uniform. No. I won't leave you.
Katherine felt tears prick her own eyes, but she hardened her expression. Ayla, you have to. She grabbed Ayla's hands, squeezing them tightly. Listen to me, sweetheart. The shuttle has an AI. It will teach you everything you need to know. It will keep you alive.
Ayla sniffled. I can't do it without you.
Katherine cupped her daughter's face, her voice firm despite her fading strength. Yes, you can. You're the smartest girl I know. The AI will teach you how to find food, how to land safely, how to survive. She took a shuddering breath and continued, her grip tightening. It will teach you how to fly, how to navigate the stars, and how to stay safe on your journey. Every day, listen to it, learn from it. The AI will be your teacher, your guide. It knows how to protect you.
Ayla hiccuped, still clinging to her mother, but I don't want to be alone.
Katherine kissed her forehead, whispering, You won't be. We'll always be with you, in the stars, in your heart. And one day, you'll teach others what we've learned. Her voice grew weaker, but she forced herself to go on. Repeat it back to me, Ayla. What do you do?
Ayla sobbed but obeyed, her voice barely a whisper. I let the AI teach me. I learn every day. I listen and survive.
Katherine managed a small smile. That's my girl. They argued back and forth, but Katherine's strength was fading fast. She knew her time was running out. Finally, with one last, agonizing breath, she whispered, Go, my love. Ayla, still sobbing, turned and ran.
Ayla climbed into the shuttle, her small hands shaking as she accessed the control panel. The cockpit was designed for adults, its controls too large for her tiny fingers, but she had watched her parents enough times to know what to do. Her breath came in ragged gasps as she struggled to focus, forcing herself to ignore the way her hands trembled. She had to be brave now. Mommy said to fly. Her vision blurred with tears, but she slapped the navigation controls, calling up the emergency autopilot. The display flickered to life, showing the pre-programmed escape routes. Destination, Proxima Centauri b. Travel time, 9 months. Ayla reached forward, hesitated, and then pressed the engage sequence just as another explosion rocked the hangar. The fire outside was everywhere now, consuming the reinforced steel framework. The glow from the flames cast long, flickering shadows across the sleek white interior of the shuttle. She glanced back through the small viewport in the rear hatch, hoping, desperate, that she would see Mommy running toward her. But the corridor behind her was a roaring inferno. She was alone. Then, another explosion. The force of it slammed into the shuttle, sending the entire craft rocketing forward. Ayla yelped, her small body flung back into the seat as the G-forces pressed her down. The engines roared to life, engaging full emergency thrust as the auto-navigation took over. The entire craft shuddered violently, its shields automatically activating to deflect debris as the launch bay collapsed in on itself. Through the front viewport, Ayla saw the blackness of space rushing toward her, the receding shape of the USS Donald J. Trump filling the background. Then, the ship exploded. Ayla screamed. The bright flash of detonation filled the viewport, the shockwave rippling outward, sending burning wreckage spinning into the void. The force sent her shuttle tumbling, the artificial gravity struggling to compensate as alarms blared warnings in multiple languages. She grabbed the armrests, her heart pounding wildly in her chest. The USS Donald J. Trump, her home, her father, her mother, everything she had ever known, was gone. For several long seconds, she couldn't move, couldn't breathe. Her tiny hands gripped the edges of her seat, her fingers curling so tightly her knuckles turned white. The shuttle leveled out, its auto-navigation adjusting for the shockwave. The display flickered, showing her trajectory stabilizing, her course now locked onto Proxima Centauri b. But Ayla couldn't look at it. Instead, she turned her tear-streaked face toward the viewport, staring out into the endless black sea of space. Everything was quiet now. Too quiet. She reached up and wiped her eyes, trying to steady her breath, but she couldn't stop the way her chest ached. Her voice, barely a whisper, broke the silence. "Is anyone else out here?" The stars gave no answer. Her small fingers hovered over the communication panel, hesitating. She swallowed hard, then pressed the distress beacon. Just like her parents had taught her, a blinking red light appeared. SOS signal active. Transmitting to all frequencies. Ayla stared at it, waiting, hoping. Seconds passed. Then minutes. There was no response. She hugged her knees to her chest, curling into the oversized pilot seat, her tiny frame dwarfed by the immense controls around her. For the first time in her life, she was completely, truly alone. The shuttle continued on, drifting silently through the void. Ayla watched the stars, her voice barely more than a breath. "Is anybody out there?" The stars remained silent, and as the shuttle carried her forward, away from everything she had ever known, she was left with one terrible, suffocating thought. What if she was the only one left? Please tune in next week for episode 2 by liking and subscribing. Please leave a comment or an idea what Ayla should encounter on future episodes.